I never expected the air in that room to feel so heavy. Not loud, not dramatic, just a kind of weight, as if every word I thought of saying might hang in the silence too long. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, her hand around a half-empty glass of water, her shoulders tilted slightly away like she was trying not to notice me. The bride's mother. That's how I knew her first. I wasn't supposed to think of her any other way, but once that thought came, it wouldn't leave. She wasn't just the bride's mother. She was the way she leaned back in her chair and glanced toward the window like the fading light could give her an excuse not to meet my eyes. She was the faint smile that broke too quickly, the kind that left you wondering if you'd imagined it. "Don't tell the groom about this," she had teased earlier, when she poured me a drink I wasn't old enough to be offered. Not really. It wasn't the words that stayed with me, it was the way her voice lowered, like there was a secret folded beneath it. I laughed, but the sound came out thin. My throat had gone dry, and I couldn't look at her for long. She wasn't doing anything, just shifting her glass in small circles on the table, but that quiet was louder than anything. I tried to fill it. I talked about the music from the rehearsal, about how strange it was seeing everyone dressed up like they weren't themselves. I kept talking, too much maybe, just to avoid the pull of her silence. She nodded, smiled once, brushed her hair back from her face with the tips of her fingers. Nothing more. Every now and then, her eyes flicked up at me. Not long enough to catch, but long enough to know I was being seen. And that was worse than if she had stared. The clock on the wall ticked in uneven beats. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked and settled again. It felt like the whole house was holding its breath. I shifted in my chair. "So," I said, "tomorrow's big." The words sounded small the second they left me. She exhaled slowly, almost a laugh but not quite. "Big," she repeated. Her lips pressed together like she was keeping the rest of the sentence to herself. I wanted to ask. I wanted to know what she wasn't saying. But I stayed quiet, fingers drumming on the edge of the table. Her hand stilled on the glass. She looked at me then, really looked, with a softness that burned more than anything sharp could have. The kind of look that made you wonder if she was remembering something or wishing she could forget it. The silence stretched. I told myself not to imagine it meant anything. She was older, wiser, everything I wasn't. And yet my chest felt too tight, like I was holding something I couldn't let slip. I caught myself leaning forward before I meant to, elbows brushing the table, voice quieter now. "You ever wish things were different?" She blinked, startled by the question. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her fingers flexed once on the glass, then let go, leaving a faint ring of condensation behind. The air between us felt like it was about to break, when suddenly, the sharp buzz of her phone on the counter cut through the moment. Her eyes flicked toward it, then back at me. Neither of us moved. Her phone kept buzzing on the counter, but she didn't reach for it. The glow of the screen lit the edge of the table, a name flashing that I tried not to read. I told myself not to care, not to wonder if it was someone waiting for her. Someone who had a place in her life that I didn't. When she finally moved, it wasn't toward the phone. She leaned back in her chair, folding her arms, like she was suddenly aware of the space between us. "You're too young to be sitting here wasting your night with me," she said lightly, though her voice was thinner than her smile. I laughed, but it didn't sound right. "I don't mind." The truth was, I minded too much. Every second felt like a secret I wasn't supposed to hold. She tilted her head, studying me, then looked away as if she'd gone too far already. Her eyes landed on the glass ring she'd left on the table, and she traced it absently with one fingertip. I thought of asking about her life, but the question came out before I could stop it. "Were you always like this? So careful?" The word hung in the air. She looked at me then, and for a moment I thought she might laugh it off. Instead, she sighed. "No. I used to be reckless. I married young. Thought I knew everything. I didn't." Her voice softened, almost as if she was talking to herself. "It's hard to explain to someone your age." I shifted in my chair, stung and curious all at once. You could try. Her lips pressed into a faint smile. She hesitated, then looked back at me. I stayed too long in something that should have ended earlier. I told myself I was being strong, but really, I was afraid. And when you lose years like that, she trailed off, shaking her head, you start being careful with everything. I didn't know what to say. My chest ached, and yet I wanted her to keep going, to let me hold pieces of her no one else saw. She must have felt it too, because she quickly pulled back. What about you? Surely you have someone? Her words carried a teasing note, but her eyes flickered, betraying something sharper beneath. I shrugged. I did. Once. It ended before it began. I don't think she even noticed I cared. She nodded, as if she understood too well. The silence that followed was heavier than before, but not empty. It was full of things either of us should say. I glanced at the phone again, still glowing faintly on the counter, and forced myself to look back at her instead. She noticed. Her lips curved, but not into a smile, more like the trace of a thought she didn't want to admit. I don't know why I did it, but I reached across the table, just far enough that my fingertips brushed the condensation ring she'd left behind. She froze, eyes flicking to mine, then to the mark on the table. Her hand hovered, uncertain, then settled gently on the wood, close enough that the space between our fingers felt electric. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. The clock ticked. The phone buzzed again. And in that silence, it felt like the room belonged to only us. Her fingers were so close to mine I could feel the faint warmth radiating, and I swear the air between us hummed. I didn't dare move, though. If I shifted even a fraction, it would mean something we couldn't take back. Her eyes lingered on me for too long, then she pulled back suddenly, the scrape of her chair cutting through the silence. She stood, almost too quickly. I should check on things upstairs, she muttered. But before she could take a step, the front door opened. Heavy, careless footsteps echoed down the hall. My chest tightened. Hello? A man's voice called out, low and impatient. Her face strained of color. She glanced at me, then toward the counter, where her phone still lit up with unanswered messages. She didn't say a word, just pressed a finger to her lips, her eyes wide. I froze. The man's footsteps grew closer, stopping just outside the kitchen. He leaned into the doorway, a tall figure in a loosened tie, smelling faintly of smoke. His eyes flicked between us. You're still up? He asked her, tone flat, like he already knew the answer. She smiled too quickly, her hand brushing her hair back. Just talking. About tomorrow. You should get some rest. His gaze lingered on me, then on the two empty glasses on the table. My heart thudded so hard I thought he might hear it. You sure about that? He said quietly. I opened my mouth to answer, but she spoke before I could. Yes. I'm sure. Her tone left no room for argument. For a long second, he didn't move. Then he gave a stiff nod and turned away, his footsteps fading up the stairs. A door shut. Silence returned, heavier than before. She exhaled shakily, her hand gripping the back of the chair. You should go, she whispered. But I couldn't move. My body refused. Do you want me to? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp and conflicted. She shook her head, but it wasn't a clear no. It was the kind of shake that meant she couldn't admit the truth out loud. I can't, she started, but her voice broke off. I stood then, almost without thinking, the chair legs scraping against the floor. The space between us felt too small, the tension too big. We were close, closer than we'd ever been. Her breath caught. My hand lifted halfway, like I might touch her arm, her face, something. But she stepped back just in time, her voice trembling. Don't. I stopped, hands suspended uselessly in the air. The look in her eyes wasn't anger, it was worse. It was longing buried under fear, guilt layered over something that wanted to break free. Neither of us spoke. Then, upstairs, the floor creaked again. The reminder of who else was in the house hit like a slap. She turned away, pressing her palm against the counter to steady herself. "We can't," she whispered. But the way her voice cracked told me she wasn't sure. I couldn't sleep after that night. Every sound in the house felt amplified: the hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock, the occasional groan of the floorboards upstairs. I paced the guest room like a caged animal, her words echoing in my head, "We can't." But the truth was, we already had. Not with our hands, not yet, but in every glance that lasted too long, every silence that said more than words. By morning, I was half dazed, running on nerves and the taste of coffee that had gone cold in my cup. She was already in the kitchen when I came down, hair tied loosely back, sleeves rolled to her elbows. She didn't look at me at first. "Sleep okay?" she asked, voice too even. "Not really." Her hands stilled on the counter. She didn't answer. The quiet stretched between us again. My chest burned with all the things I wanted to say, all the things I couldn't. Finally, I blurted out the one question that had been gnawing at me. "Why do you keep looking at me like that?" Her head snapped up. "Like what?" "You know," I said, my voice unsteady. "Like you wanted to say something, but you stopped yourself. Like you're—" I cut off, afraid of finishing the thought. Her lips parted, then closed again. She turned back to the sink, gripping its edge. "You shouldn't ask me things like that." I stepped closer before I could think better of it. "Maybe I shouldn't, but I can't stop." "You think I don't notice? The way you look away too quickly, the way you— Enough." Her voice was sharp, but it cracked halfway through, betraying her. She spun to face me, eyes bright with something between fury and fear. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." My words came out fast, reckless. "I can't stop thinking about you." Her breath hitched, just barely audible, but enough to undo me. The silence that followed was unbearable. She lifted a hand to her temple like she could push the thought away, but her eyes betrayed her. They searched mine, raw and desperate, like she'd been waiting for me to say it even as she prayed I wouldn't. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't do this to me." "I'm not." I stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from her skin. My voice dropped, shaking. "I'm just telling the truth." Her hand trembled as she lowered it, hovering between us like she might push me away, or pull me closer. The clock ticked louder. Upstairs, a faint thud reminded us we weren't alone. But in that kitchen, it felt like the world had narrowed to only her and me. She looked at me then, really looked, her eyes dark and wet, her lips parting with words she never said. And then she leaned in, just enough that the space between us vanished into a single breath. I stopped breathing altogether. Her breath mingled with mine. I could feel the faint tremor in her hand, the way her body leaned forward before instinct yanked her back. She caught herself at the last second, fingers pressing hard into the counter, as if holding the whole house steady. And then, voices. Muffled at first, then clearer. Laughter, footsteps. The sound of a door closing, bags being set down. My blood ran cold. She froze, eyes snapping wide. "They're early," she whispered, horror in her voice. Before I could ask who, the living room filled with chatter. Her daughter. The bride. My friend. Every nerve in my body lit up. If they came in here now, if they saw the distance between us that wasn't nearly enough, everything would shatter. She pressed a hand against my chest, firm but trembling. "Go. Now." I wanted to argue, but the urgency in her eyes left no space. I slipped out the side door, heart hammering, and circled around to the back porch, breath sharp in the cool air. Inside I heard greetings, hugs, the ordinary chaos of family. I should have left it at that. I should have walked away. But the words from earlier clawed at me. "I can't stop thinking about you." And the way she almost, leaned in. I lingered outside, near the window, shame burning through me. That's when I heard it. "Don't tell the groom about this." Her voice low, teasing. At first I thought she was talking about me. Panic shot through me like a blade. But then I heard the rest, muffled but clear enough. Something about messages. About meetings no one else knew about. The laughter that followed wasn't hers. It was another man's. A voice I hadn't heard before. My stomach twisted. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The pieces shifted too fast in my head, her silence, her phone buzzing late at night, the way her husband barely looked at her. And now, another man's voice, woven into her secrets. She wasn't just hiding me. She was hiding someone else. The back door opened suddenly, spilling warm light across the porch. She stepped out, her face tight, every muscle drawn like a bowstring. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed. I stared at her, struggling to find my voice. "Who was that?" Her expression faltered, just for a second. Then she straightened, folding her arms like armor. "It's none of your concern. It is if you're—" My words caught bitter in my throat. "If you're doing with him what you almost did with me." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. "You don't understand." "You're right," I snapped. "I don't. You tell me I'm too young, too reckless, and then you—" I broke off, breath shaking. "What am I to you? A mistake you're already planning to forget?" She flinched like I'd struck her, but didn't answer. The silence was worse than anything she could have said. For the first time, I felt the weight of it, how dangerous, how fragile, how impossible this was. The kitchen light flickered through the glass, voices laughing in the next room, a wedding waiting to happen. And between us, a truce she wasn't ready to give, and a betrayal I wasn't sure I could forgive. The night stretched long after the laughter inside faded. I stayed on the porch, unable to leave, unable to step back in. The cold bit at my skin, but it was nothing compared to the ache burning through my chest. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed as though holding herself together. I waited for her to speak, but she didn't. It was me who broke the silence. "Tell me the truth," I said, voice low. "Is there someone else?" Her jaw tightened. She looked past me, at the shadows of the garden, before finally meeting my eyes. "Yes." The word landed like a blow, simple and brutal. I laughed bitterly, shaking my head. So what was I? A distraction? Something to pass the time? No. Her voice cracked, and for the first time tonight she didn't hide it. She stepped closer, her face raw, stripped of pretense. "You were the only thing that made me feel alive again. Do you understand that? It wasn't supposed to happen. But it did." My breath caught. The anger I'd clung to faltered under the weight of her confession. "You say that," I whispered. "But you'll still choose him, won't you? Whoever he is. Because he's safer." Her eyes shone. "Because he's not my daughter's friend." The truth cut deeper than any lie could. I turned away, pacing, running a hand through my hair. "You think I care about that? You think I haven't thought of the consequences? I don't care if it's reckless. I can't stop." My voice broke, and I swallowed hard. "I can't stop wanting you." Her hand lifted as if to reach for me, then faltered midair. "And what happens after? When the whispers start? When your life is tied to someone else, and this becomes nothing more than a shadow you regret?" I spun back to her, my chest heaving. "I wouldn't regret you." The silence that followed was unbearable. She searched my face as if trying to decide if she could believe me. Her lips trembled, her body tense with the war between fear and desire. And then, with a shuddering breath, she stepped forward. Her hand brushed mine, not a full grasp, just the lightest touch, like testing if the world would crumble beneath it. I froze. That single touch was enough to undo every wall I'd built, every line we'd tried to hold. My hand turned, catching hers, our fingers threading together. We stood there, barely breathing, knowing this moment was both everything and nothing. That tomorrow it could be erased, or denied, or hidden forever. But tonight, in the quiet glow of the porch light, it was real. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, she didn't pull away. "Then don't regret me," she whispered. I tightened my grip, my voice barely a breath. "Never." The house behind us stayed silent, but the weight of tomorrow pressed close. and still, neither of us let go. Morning crept in too soon. The first light seeped through the curtains, gray and soft, as if the world itself wanted to keep its voice low. I hadn't slept. Neither had she. I could tell from the way her eyes looked when I saw her in the kitchen, a quiet kind of tired that went deeper than just one night. She stood at the counter with her hands wrapped around a mug, not drinking, just holding it like an anchor. I wanted to walk up, take it from her, and hold her instead. But I stayed by the doorway. "Did anyone notice?" I asked finally. She shook her head, her hair slipping loose over her cheek. "No. But they will, if we're not careful." The words stung, but I understood. Every second we'd stolen already felt like more than we should have had. Still, I couldn't help it. I stepped closer. "Then what do we do?" She lifted her eyes to me, full of things she wouldn't say. Regret. Fear. Longing. It was all there, and for once, she didn't look away. "We end it," she whispered, "before it ruins everything." I should have expected it. I told myself I did. But hearing it broke something anyway. I laughed softly, bitterly, shaking my head. "You think it's that simple? Just end it, like none of this mattered?" Her grip on the mug tightened, knuckles pale. "It mattered too much. That's why it has to stop." I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, to beg her not to choose silence over us. But as I looked at her, standing there with all her walls half broken, I realized this wasn't just about fear. It was about love in its strangest, most fragile form, the kind that hurts because it can't fit into the world. I closed the space between us anyway. My hand brushed hers, gentle, grounding. She didn't pull away. "I'll carry it," I said quietly. "Even if this is all we get. I'll carry it with me." Her lips parted, and for a second, I thought she'd tell me not to. Instead, she just nodded, eyes shining. "So will I." The silence that followed wasn't the heavy kind anymore. It was softer, almost peaceful, like an ending we both understood even if we didn't want it. In the next room, voices stirred, the start of a day that didn't belong to us. She straightened, smoothed her hair, and slipped her hand from mine. "Go," she said, her tone steady this time. I lingered, memorizing the curve of her face in the light, the way her shoulders rose and fell with each careful breath. Then I turned, walking out before I could break. The door shut behind me, but her presence stayed, woven into me in ways I knew I'd never forget. Maybe we'd never find a way back. Maybe we weren't meant to. But for once, I didn't feel like a mistake in her story. I felt like something real, something she'd carry, too. And that was enough.